I can't do this. This is too hard. I would have to make major changes in my life to achieve that. I'm too old to do that. I'm too young to do that. Nobody cares about me. No one understands me. I'm not important. Nothing is ever good enough. Why even bother? Does any of this sound familiar? Can any of y'all relate to that? Well, if you can, keep listening to this episode and prepare yourself for a life that's worth living. What's goody? I'm your host, J-Smoove, and welcome to The Life Unexamined is Not Worth Living. And we are on episode 9, Defeatist Mentality. Now, before I get started, you all can find me on Spotify and Apple, and there all of y'all can follow and subscribe to my podcast. Also, I ask that you please take the time out to leave me both a rating and a review. Follow me on IG at the_life_unexamined_podcast. And there I'll be sharing some video content of me discussing various topics that I talk about on my episodes during the week. And I'll also be sharing my words of the day to keep y'all actively thinking. And please visit my website, examineinlives.com, where you can find information about my podcast, information about myself. You can find information about guests that I have on my episodes. I have some blogs that I'm putting together as well. And if you want to reach out to me, you can hit me up on my website. Any suggestions, feedback, any questions that you may have, please don't hesitate to ask. And if it makes it easier for y'all, you can also leave me a voice message on my website. And who knows, I may end up playing a message on one of my episodes, with your consent, of course. All right, so let's get back to business. So now let's look to Merriam-Webster's for the definition of defeatism. Now, defeatism is the attitude of accepting, expecting, or being resigned to defeat. So having a defeatist mentality is the acceptance of defeat without struggle. And there's also negative connotations and pessimism that's attached to that. So a defeatist mentality can attack you in many ways. Every goal that you go after is sabotaged. The repetitive thought process continuously drags you down and convinces you that nothing is worth the effort. It's that thing that keeps you from trying to change in the first place, making you afraid, and it scares you. And the thought of putting in that much effort for it all to be for naught, you'll end up thinking that you're just wasting your time. So with every thought that we have, it continues to grow stronger. And with every action that we attempt, it results in no action. Yeah, y'all know everything that I'm talking about. And you're not alone. This is common among many of us. And I'm going to get into all of that. But before I get into the steps that you could use to combat this type of mentality, I want to say that everything that I talked about in episodes 1 through 4 on my podcast, foundation, who am I, conditional versus unconditional, core values, I want to make it very clear that before you can even combat this type of mentality, you have to make sure that you figured out all of the guiding principles that I talked about before, or you're in the process of determining that. Because if you try to combat defeatism and you don't have a strong foundation, you don't know who you are, you don't know if you're conditional or unconditional, you don't know what your core values are, then I'm going to be honest with y'all. You are going to make things extremely difficult for yourself. I told y'all before, there's no skipping steps. Seriously, there's no skipping steps. You could hear some advice. You could be given some steps to help you combat defeatism. You can, and you can make progress with that. That's a fact. But I am a firm believer, and like I said, these are just one man's thoughts. That's all. But I believe that if you don't have a strong foundation and you do not know who you are, then a lot of that progress that you have is not going to be consistent and it's not going to last long. And we also have to remember that steps and ideas and helpful tips are only helpful if we know exactly what we're combating, or if we know exactly who we are, if we know exactly what we're triggered by, if we know exactly what bothers us personally. So if you don't know any of that, then what type of progress do we think that we're really making, yo? Not a lot. Because I want all of y'all to understand that self-help is very specific to the individual. They're not just generalized statements or generalized thoughts. Those can be helpful, and that's dope. But how do we know what works for us if we actually haven't put in the work to know who we are? And I just wanted to say all of that before I got started, because it is paramount that we do all that requisite work before we start thinking about everything that we struggle with. I need help in this area. I'm lacking in this area. So if you haven't already, please go listen to episodes 1 through 4 of my podcast. All right. So I know some of y'all are probably saying, yo, can we get to the steps? Can you start talking about how to conquer this defeatist mentality? Yeah. I know. I understand. But sometimes we need to pump our brakes. We're not running away from the fundamentals. We're not looking at the groundwork as an afterthought. We're not doing that on this podcast. Nah, that's not going to happen. But I digress. So the first step to combating the defeatist mentality is having self-awareness and knowing what your triggers are. What are the pessimistic thoughts that come up when you try to take action to change your life? Do you feel stupid? Do you feel like you have no self-worth? Do you feel scared that people will look at you differently or they'll judge you? Or maybe you're just terrified by the possibility that you may fail. We have to start becoming aware of those recurring negative thoughts that pop up when things get tough, when things are difficult, when we feel uncomfortable. And let me know if this sounds familiar to y'all. You start with the belief that you can't do anything before you even try it. You make up all these scenarios in your head as to why you won't succeed. You put all this time and effort into creating all these different situations that involve you failing, that involve you not getting to your goal. So let's say that you have family or friends or someone close to you that tells you to try because they've heard your aspirations, your ideas, your thoughts, and they're trying to push you to do something. So you give them pushback, but over time, you get tired of them nagging you and you just want to shut them up. But because you have such a deep-rooted belief that you will fail, your work ethic and your effort is trash. It's piss poor. And when you end up failing, it basically just reinforces your self-defeating behavior from the beginning. And that's the point. You tell yourself that, oh yeah, I was right. See, I knew that I was going to fail. It is what it is. But again, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy because you don't really have a true belief in yourself to do it anyway. But that quote-unquote trying that you're doing is nothing but self-sabotage. You're sabotaging yourself with the intent to prove yourself right. And once we understand that that's what we're doing, then that's when we can make real progress. We all have that inner voice within ourselves at times that has doubt. That voice that tells us that we're not good enough, that we can't do this, it's too hard. That stuff is natural. We all have that to different degrees, right? They vary, but we all have that and we all struggle with that. You could be the most confident person in the world and you still are going to have that inner voice, that inner critic within you that talks like that. But again, once you acknowledge that, once you have a real understanding of your triggers, then now you have an advantage. And there are many triggers that we all feel, but let's use fear as an example. And fear is one of those examples that are very prevalent. I mean, we all have fears of different things, right? Fear is something that is natural. Fear is something that is helpful as well in ways because fear is something that keeps us away from danger, right? When you know that something is about to pop off or something is about to go on, there's something within you that may cause you to stay away from that. And I categorize that as a healthy fear. But fear is also something that keeps us away from our full potential. It keeps us away from attaining our goals. So if fear is something that is a trigger for you, and it's something that really bothers you, and it stops you from completing tasks, completing a goal, reaching your full potential, as I stated earlier, then you have to ask yourself, why are you scared? What do you fear? And when I say ask yourself that, I literally mean ask yourself that. Talk to yourself. And I repeat, talk to yourself. Self-talk is very healthy, and it's something that we all should be making a regular part of our lives. I'm serious, yo. Like, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm dead serious. We 100% need to talk to ourselves a lot more if we're not already. And I'm not saying that you need to be going around every day and everything that you do just talking to yourself. No, I'm not saying that. But I am saying When you are triggered by something, when something bothers you and it affects how you operate, you really need to examine, reflect, and ask yourself why that is the case. You can also take notes and write it down. If you're a visual person, write it down so that you could always go back to your thoughts, and maybe the next day or next week or next month, you're reading it with a fresh pair of eyes and understanding. We're not going to make progress doing the same things over and over again. We know that, right? That's insanity. We got to challenge ourselves, even if it makes us feel uncomfortable. And I don't want you all to lose sight of what you actually have accomplished in your life. I don't want y'all to lose sight of that, because I think that that's very important, very important. Sometimes people have a bad habit of thinking about what their shortcomings are, thinking about what they don't have, thinking about what they struggle with, dwelling on negativity, dwelling on things that continue to keep them down, but they don't think about what they actually have. They don't always appreciate what they actually have. They don't always appreciate the process. They don't know how to appreciate their skill set, what they do well. And that's a problem. We have to reflect on the progress, where we have succeeded in our lives, when we were able to push past uncomfortable situations, difficult situations. I want y'all to understand that that is very important, and don't take that lightly. Don't sweep that under the rug. For an example, like myself, I use all of my loss, all of the tragedies that I've had in my life, the pain, the suffering, the trauma. I use all of that to continue to carry me through my life. That's a part of my journey, and I don't lose sight of that ever. Now, that doesn't mean that for the rest of my life, I'm going to continue to go through loss and all that. No, but I have to be intelligent, and I use that same mental fortitude and that fight that I had. I use that for all aspects of my life, because that mindset that I had, that I have to this day, it can be applied to all situations in my life. So if I feel fear, if I feel uncomfortable, if I'm thinking like, dang, this is difficult, yo. I got to put a lot of work in to get through this one. I got to learn a lot. This is going to be tough. I look within to continue to push myself. And that's what we have to do. Really think about our lives, really think about the progress that we have made, and appreciate it. Because even if you have a defeatist mentality when it comes to certain aspects of your lives, ask yourself if you have a defeatist mentality when it comes to everything. Because if you don't, then that's evidence right there that you do have the fortitude and the mindset to accomplish your tasks, your goals. You do. And when we're setting up goals, we want to make sure that those goals align with our personality, they align with our skill set, and we have to know what our strengths and our weaknesses are, because we all have them. None of us are perfect. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. We have to know who we are, because if we're setting unrealistic expectations on ourselves or goals on ourselves that don't align with who we are, then again, we're setting ourselves up for failure. So we want to make sure that we're putting in the proper work before we even think about certain goals or combating defeatism. And I also want to stress that there is nothing wrong with being cynical. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? This doesn't fit my personality. This doesn't match my skill set. This is not something that I'm going to attain. This is not something that is going to work for me, based on logic, right? Based on who I am, based on the fact that, I'm not going to do that. No, that's not going to work for me. Because in my opinion, there's a fine line between defeatism and knowing who you are and knowing what you want. They're not the same thing. So if you are cynical at times and you do think about life in a certain way that may be negative to other people, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Because I don't want to put the impression out there that this is about, oh yeah, anything that we put out there, we can accomplish everything. And look, that sounds good. It does. It sounds great. It sounds amazing. But no, I don't believe that every person that walks this earth can achieve every single thing in life. No, yo, there's some things that are just not for all of us, yo. Seriously. And that doesn't make you an idiot for saying that to someone. It's the truth. It's the truth. It's the reality. But things that are within reason, things that are attainable within our grasp, well, we need to understand how to get there. And now this brings me to success and failure. Now, success is very subjective. What you may deem to be success may not be what I deem to be success. It is subjective to the individual. It is very imperative that we understand what success is to each and every one of us, and not what success is to your friends or your family or whomever. They don't matter. What they may think success is may not align with what you think success is. And please be aware that if we have one very narrow view of success, then we are more likely going to fail. And I will say it again. If we have one very narrow view of success, we are more than likely going to fail. Nevertheless, there is also nothing wrong with us not attaining our goal and being successful. There's nothing wrong with that, because when we fail, there's learning that comes from that if we allow ourselves to learn from that. That's our choice. But we have to be reflective, because what if you had a goal and you didn't actually attain that goal? You didn't quite get there, but you put a lot of work in and you build different skill sets. You attain knowledge. You attain wisdom. You grew. That's dope. You're winning. You understand what I'm saying? You are. So when we fail, that's not always a bad thing. Failure is a part of life. There's not one person that has been born that hasn't failed. We all fail. And there is beauty in failure. Once again, if you allow yourself to partake in that beauty. All of us don't know how to do that because we get so fixated on, I gotta succeed. I have to succeed. I have to win. I have to attain my goal. Yeah, that mindset is great. And you should try to do that. But if you don't, there's lessons learned in everything. So if you're an all or nothing type of person, understand that there are major drawbacks to that. And I can kind of relate to it because I'm a very task-driven person, a very results-driven person. So if the result isn't attained, sometimes I'm like, all right, well, I ain't get the result, so it is what it is. But what I've learned through my journey, and I've said this before, appreciate the process. Appreciate your failures. Appreciate your success. Appreciate everything. Don't take anything for granted whatsoever. I'm telling y'all, it pays dividends. So I'm sure many of y'all have heard or are familiar with positive affirmations, having positive thoughts. And I believe in that. I do believe in having positive thoughts 100%. I believe in having positive affirmations 100%. And that also ties into when I was talking about us engaging in self-talk, having conversations with ourselves, talking to ourselves. Positive affirmations go hand in hand with that. But me personally, I take it a step further. And I believe that the positive affirmations and the words that we use shouldn't just be idle words, but should have real meaning. I think that we should have a true understanding of what we're saying to ourselves and have confidence in those same words. And having the understanding that believing in these affirmations doesn't take away from struggle. Not at all. Struggle is always going to be there. But I am just a proponent of believing what you say. Everybody has their own philosophies, and that's cool. But I'm personally not a fan of using words and saying things that we don't actually believe in. That's not my cup of tea. If it helps you, that's dope. That's dope. There's nothing wrong with that. Whatever helps you. But me personally, I believe in going a little bit deeper than that and having a true understanding of the affirmations that we're using and actually asking ourselves, does this work for me? Saying something along the lines of, oh, I can accomplish anything. Nothing will ever get in my way. That stuff is like filler to me because there's going to be a lot of things that may get in your way and you're going to struggle. But I digress. Now, with all that being said, though, the more that you have these positive thoughts and these positive affirmations, it is going to become second nature to you. It 100% will, because you got to think about it. When defeatism is inside you and you continue to let it run rampant, that becomes your everyday life. That's a part of who you are. It's attached to you. So once you try to eliminate those thoughts and you come up with reasonable goals and you continue to have positive energy in your life, it makes a world of a difference. And remember that your problems are not going to be solved with the same level of thinking that you have currently. It's not going to happen. We have to attain a higher level of mindfulness. We do. And we have to pretty much rewire our brain and teach our brain to process this new information that we're learning and teach our brain how to process this new mindset that we have. That's really what we have to do. And our brain is going to fight us because what we are used to is always going to be easier. What we're teaching that's new, that's challenging our brain. And it's a fight. It's going to be a struggle. But this is the importance of continuously doing this on a daily basis. It's about discipline. It's about repetition. So I use an example for myself. I work out multiple times a week, and I've been doing this for years. I don't miss any days. Now, there's definitely times when I don't feel like working out and it's difficult. I'm hurting. I have injuries from playing basketball. With that being said, I have the discipline and I have the longevity, the repetition where it becomes second nature to me. So even when I don't feel like doing it, because remember, the struggle and the triggers that we have, they're never going to go away. They're always going to be there at a certain point. They will. Even for me. Like I said, I've been working out for years, over a decade, for years, consistently. I still feel the same things that other people feel when they're like, man, I ain't going to the gym today. Man, I ain't working out today. Nah, it's too much. It's too difficult. We all go through that. We're all people. We're human beings. But it's about teaching yourself how to be disciplined and creating that higher level of mindfulness. So before I get out of here, I want y'all to join me on this figurative language journey that I'm about to embark on. It's a first-person narrative from the perspective of Defeatist. Defeatist is a parasite, and parasitism is a close relationship between species where one organism, the parasite, lives on or inside another organism, the host, causing it damage and harm. Parasites increase their own fitness by exploiting hosts for resources necessary for their survival, in particular by feeding on them and by using secondary hosts to assist in their transmission from one definitive host to another. So as I said before, the fetus is a parasite that looks for a host to attach itself to. And when it attaches itself to that host, it creates a symbiotic relationship and it feeds on that host. So for the most part, a parasite is not looking to kill its host. And if it does, it's a process that takes a long time. The fetus looks to attach itself to a community of individuals who exhibit low self-esteem, laziness, poor work ethic, individuals who have no self-worth and fold under pressure, those who lack discipline, etc. So the fetus feeds off of this negative energy and reaps all the benefits while harming its host. And it will essentially be active within this person until the day that they die. On the other hand, you have a community of individuals who are confident, have high self-esteem, individuals with self-worth, those who are disciplined, those that don't fold under pressure. The fetus treads lightly when it comes to these types of hosts because they understand that the lifespan of their attachment to these people is not going to be long. They come and go. The fetus has the ability to attach itself to any host. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they exhibit positive energy. But the difference between the hosts that have these type of traits is that they're able to rid themselves of these parasites and continue to go on with their life. See, the fetus is a parasite that comes in many forms. It's our mindset. It's the negative thoughts. It's the comments that may come from people externally that affect us. It's all of those and more. But these parasites that are defeatists are never going to go anywhere. It's a part of life. They're a part of our world. And the point of the story isn't to tell you about some happy ending and how everybody overcame defeatists. Nah. There are always going to be a host for a parasite to attach itself to. That will never change. But what can change is our mentality. We all are going to have our moments of being defeated. That's natural. But don't let those moments define and shape you. Always remember to reflect on your progress and appreciate where you are. Don't dwell on where you aren't. It doesn't matter how insignificant or small that you think that your progress is, examine and reflect on it. So I started this episode with a plethora of defeatist comments. So now I'm going to end this episode with the complete opposite of that. I can do this. This isn't too hard. I would have to make major changes in my life to achieve that. And that's dope. I'm older and I'm wiser. I'm young and I bring a lot to the table. And I'm willing to learn. There may be people in my life that care and don't care about me. And that's okay. There may be people in my life that understand me and don't understand me. And that's okay too. Oh, I know I'm important to me and those who love me. I determine what is good enough and satisfactory for my life. So this is what everything is about, y'all. And remember, don't defeat yourself. Stop being your worst enemy. And realize that you are your greatest asset. Period. No one else. You. And when defeatist starts to creep up on you, tell it to shut up. Nah, I'm serious. Tell it to shut up. Tell it to mind its business. I ain't trying to hear all that. And kick rocks. And I don't know about y'all, but being able to dominate a defeatist mentality and put it in its place, well, that's just another path to a life that's worth living. I'm your host, J-Smoove, and you just listened to The Life Unexamined is Not Worth Living. And I'm out of here. Peace.